Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And I already know we're going to have so much fun today. I was looking at our guest's LinkedIn account and his website, and this man likes to have fun and be funny and bring it into business. Oh my gosh, what a concept. So please join me in welcoming Sunjay Nath to our program today. Welcome, Sunjay. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much, Deb. How are you? And what's the weather like there?
I am hunky-dory. I am in hot Atlanta. And it's actually cloudy and kind of misty and rainy and so and in Ontario, what's it like for you?
Very similar. It's misty and rainy and blah. I'll speak American for you. I would say it's 20 degrees for your international guests, which makes it 70-ish in American.
I know. I love it when somebody gives me a Celsius number. I'm like, is that hot? Is that cold? Should we feel bad for you?
I'm bilingual. I speak, American and English. So
perfect. I love it. I love it. And every once in a while, we probably get an A in there, right?
You certainly will hear one or two.
Yeah. And see, I've been in Atlanta for 10 years. And so you might get a y'all every once in a while.
Y'all, all y'all.
All y'all. Because y'all is singular. All y'all is plural.
There you go. Hold on, let me take notes.
Yes,
right,
yes, yep. And I might even teach you what bless your heart means.
I think I might be able to gather that one.
It actually depends on the inflection. Because I could say, bless your heart for being on our program today. Perfectly fine, right? If I get real Southern, the more Southern it is, the more of an idiot you are. So, you got to pay attention to that.
Yeah.
Well, oh my gosh, I can already tell, right? We're going to have a great program today. So I guess I should read your bio and then we'll jump in. So Sunjay Nath is an internationally renowned speaker who travels globally, sharing insights on leadership and performance. As a speaker in 2005, Sunjay became the youngest Canadian and third youngest in the world to earn his CSP, which is Certified Speaking Professional. And in 2018, he was inducted into the Canadian Speakers Hall of Fame. He did this all when he was like 4 and 5, right? He started an international speaking business at 19 years of age. He wasn't even old enough to rent a car. He is the author of several books, including the 10-80-10 Principle. Sunjay holds an undergraduate degree in mathematical engineering and an MBA. He is best known for his trademark, the 10-80-10 Principle, which we're going to talk about, but it is a framework that helps individuals and teams improve performance. This methodology combines best practices with small wins to help empower audiences and reach their stretch goals. So again, Sunjay, welcome to our program.
Thank you so much. My mom wrote that biography, so I'd never heard it before. So it sounds okay.
I love it. Moms always do a great job at bragging about their kids, right?
There you go.
So speaking of moms, tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today and how you discovered that this is your passion in life.
Oh, it's a great question. So I spend my time primarily as a professional speaker. And as you just heard from my bio, I have a degree in mathematical engineering. And everyone knows that engineers are well-spoken, social, emotional creatures.
Right.
And it logically follows they should all become professional speakers.
Right. Never look at their feet to talk, all of those various
Absolutely.
things.
Any other questions?
No.
There you go. Are we done? So here's my background is when I was involved in high school, I was really involved. I was that kid. I was valedictorian and student council president, played sports and ran the school store and did plays and all that stuff. And then I went on to study engineering. And while I was studying engineering, 2 years removed from high school, the current student council president, who I served as a mentor for throughout high school, she kind of called me up. She said, hey, we want you to come back and give a pep talk about getting involved and the benefits of getting involved in the school. And I went, and then she said, we'll pay you to speak. And I went, you'll
Ding,
pay
ding,
me
ding,
to
ding,
speak?
ding.
Normally people pay me to shut up. This is a
Right.
business model. And so I started doing backflips in my house, and I was living with a couple other university students. And the one girl said to me, she said, what are you so excited about? And I went, they want to pay me to speak. And she said, what are you going to speak on? I said, I don't know, leadership and getting involved. And she said, well, you know, I coach a swim team. Why don't you come and talk to the swim team? And I was like,
how much are you going to pay me?
so I didn't think that, but I went. And so she introduced me to the head coach. And head coach is like, these are some great ideas. He goes, but it sounds like more than a one-shot deal. How about you come in every week? And I was like,
wow.
Okay. So the next thing I know, as a 19-year-old, I'm waking up 6:30 Saturday mornings
Yikes.
to go and chat with 8 to 10-year-olds about communication and goal setting and dealing with your parents and writing down your goals and all this kind of stuff. And what happened is some of the older kids started sitting in on the sessions. And the parents started sitting on the session. And this one parent said to me, I said, I run a youth group. Would you like to come and speak to the youth group? And I said, sure, why not? And I went and spoke there. And everything up to now had been volunteer. And the guy, I spoke for 45 minutes. The gentleman paid me $40.
Cool.
And as a 19-year-old, my mind was blown because this
lunch.
Well, it wasn't. It was more than lunch back then, right? And I was like, $1 a minute. Oh my goodness, I'm going to be rich. And so I did that program. Actually, I initially turned down the money. I said, no, I'm doing this because I want to do it.
Right.
And he gave me one of my first really important, valuable business lessons. He said to me, he goes, no. He goes, I'm sorry we couldn't pay you more. It's actually worth a lot more. And in that audience was a teacher. And she said, how much do you charge to speak at schools? And I went, you can charge to speak at schools?
Right.
And so she ended up hiring me. And she did, again, another huge thing for me that I learned in business was she said, when you come, I'm going to invite a guidance counselor from another school to come and watch your program. Because if he
word
or
of
she
mouth.
absolutely. And they did that, and I went to that school, and then things just snowballed from there. And 28 years later, 2,000 audiences later, and over 1 million people, the phone still rings. So that's my start, and I love it. It's I love doing what I do, or pain in the butt parts of it, but I think I own both pieces, and I go, I'm more than willing to give the yucky to get the benefits because it's who I am. It's not right or wrong. It's not better or worse. It's just I love that my schedule is feast and famine. I love that sometimes tumbleweeds go through my schedule and other times I don't get to sleep. That's exciting to me. So people would stress them out.
Yeah. You know, and it's so interesting because your vocation just kind of fell upon you. But you know, what I love is that you embraced it. You know, how many times have people been given an opportunity and they're like, no, I'm studying X at university, therefore I must, you know, and they completely pass up those things because we were all told, you know, hey, you'd be good at. And, you know, many times we do completely ignore that.
Yeah. And sometimes what we do is we need that external validation. We just need permission.
Right.
We need permission from a credible source. But I think that as you get older and wiser, maybe is the term, we realize that permission can come from ourselves. That we don't need our parents or a teacher or counselor or bestie or BFF to say, oh, it's okay, you do that. You just kind of go, I'm doing it because it resonates with me. It makes my heart sing. It fills my bucket. And that can be a good enough reason.
Yeah. And then we have the opposite. We have that little voice in our head that says, oh, you can't do that. And in many cases, those were from a teacher, a parent, whoever, who in many cases, they weren't doing it to be mean, right? They were doing it to protect us. You know, I'm of the generation where little girls did not study math. They didn't study science. And nobody was trying to hurt us by telling us, no, you shouldn't do that. You should take home ec instead. And I took home ec and they went, oh, no, nah, danger. You know, so it's kind of balancing those voices. And that's a lot of what happens to leaders all the time.
Oh, without question. I think you make a very good point, which is, yeah, there are people we go, that inner voice says imposter syndrome or this or that or the other. You're not good enough, or you're too educated, or you're not educated enough, or you don't have enough experience, or you have too much experience. But I would say this though too is part of the not the right language. I want to say maturation process, but part of owning your own skin, maybe is a better way of saying it. Eventually, you get to the point where you can give yourself that permission to say, hey, even though my teacher told me I was dumb, or I shouldn't be good at math, or I'm this or I'm that, it's still on me to accept that. Right. And I have 3 sons, and I've been teasing them since they were little, because sometimes if someone goes, oh, your hair is green, people forget my hair's not green. Right. But if they truly know your hair is not green, it doesn't matter if you call it green. I don't care, because I know it's not green. Right. And so I think that, and that's a silly analogy, but the same thing is true. If someone goes, you can't succeed in business, if you really believe them, then you have that self-doubt.
Right.
But if you think that that person's opinion is so, ill-informed, and it's so useless, that it's like, okay, move on.
Yeah. You acknowledge them, and of course, a lot of times it's their problem, right?
Not only is their problem, it's projection. They're saying it because that's how they feel about themselves. Right. And therefore, misery loves company. So I'll project that on you. So I'll bring you the old expression, you never argue with an idiot.
Right.
Because they'll just knock you down to their level, beat you with their experience of being an idiot.
Right. So. Right. And it is all about that self-talk. And one of the things that I love that I noticed in your profiles and things is that you say professional speaker. And many years ago, when I first started speaking, in my LinkedIn profile, because we all should do those, right? I had public speaker. And I met for lunch, this is when I lived in Denver, with the wonderful Laura Stack. And you might know her because she is so big in NSA. And I've known her for many, many years. And this was, excuse me, one of those, I need help type of meetings where I was asking her, what should I do? And the first thing she told me was, you got to get rid of that word public. She said, because everybody knows you're a public speaker. I mean, yeah, we all talk to ourselves in the car and things like that, but you're not going to brag about that. She said, people will know that you're going to charge by saying professional speaker. And it really was this flip of a switch, in both my mind and in their minds also.
For sure. And it was actually something very intentional, because public speaker meant you could be busking on the streets of downtown Chicago. You're in the public, you're speaking. It doesn't necessarily mean you're charging. It also doesn't mean you might have any degree of goodness. Right? When you're a professional, there is a ethics, there's a standard, there's a, are you an athlete or are you a professional athlete?
Right.
Are you creating enough value that people are willing to put their, hard-earned dollars or their companies or their organizations into going, the message is so much, the value is so much there that I'm willing to pay and have my people be educated because I see the benefit. Because the only reason people ever pay is because they see more benefit than drawback.
Right.
So if they're willing to pay $100, it's because they expect to get more than $100 worth of value.
Right. And it's funny because having those conversations, especially when you're starting out, and same thing applies if you're asking for a raise, if you're going in for a job interview, all of those things, it is about that mental mindset. And I remember years ago, I was asked to speak by the Colorado Women's Chamber. Now, I loved that group. I belonged to it, thought it was very beneficial. It was at that point anyway, the largest women's chamber of commerce in the United States. And they asked me to speak about social media. And so, we're having this great conversation. And then I mentioned the word fee. And I got crickets. And, and they said, well, we assume that because you love this so much, you do it for free. Not, we assume that you're a member, so you would do it for free or anything like that. It was, you love it so much. And of course, that brought me up a little short. And I told him, I said, well, that doesn't pay my bills. And I said, but more importantly, think of it this way. You've got 2 gas stations on the corner, one across from the other. Are you going to go in and tell the one, I'm not going to pay you for the gas I just got because I love you and more than the guy across the street. And it was funny because they still didn't get it, and actually their policy was to not pay, and that was fine. And once they said that, then you have a different conversation, because then you can say things like, okay, I'm an author, I want to sell my books in the back. I want a free membership for a year, all sorts of things like that. But yeah, it was just, I love that you love what you do, so we didn't think you would charge.
Yeah. And I think, though, that the whole society should be based on you love what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And we should all be charging.
Right.
And I had a mentor say this to me very early on in my career. He said, Sunjay, there's nothing wrong with doing something for money.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with doing something for cause.
Right.
But don't mix the two of them up.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes we do that. We go, oh, well, we'll do it for cause. Do you have an extra $50?
Mm-hmm.
Wait a minute. Is it for cause or not?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I totally agree with you. It's a different conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Some people would argue and say, oh, no, hold on a second. Yeah. If I don't know how many of your audience are speakers per se, but this notion of what they call fee integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And fee integrity, you should always charge the same amount and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And I don't really buy into that.
Mm-hmm.
I believe fee integrity is charging a similar client
mm-hmm.
at a similar time for a
mm-hmm.
similar program.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But that's not the same as charging everyone the same amount all the time.
Right.
Because if I look at my schedule, and May is typically one of my busiest months of the year,
mm-hmm.
and May, busy,
mm-hmm.
and someone has, 90% of my fee,
mm-hmm.
I'm less likely to take that. Whereas if you pick me in January,
mm-hmm.
calling me from Cancun,
right,
and you have 50% of my fee,
right.
and there's tumbleweeds going through my schedule,
uh-huh.
guess what? That to me is still fee integrity.
Mm-hmm.
Because what I do is, and here's actually a very standard process I use, is when I'm talking to people, if we get to the fee discussion,
mm-hmm.
and they say, we have this, and I go, oh, but my fee is this, and we're
mm-hmm.
apart.
Mm-hmm.
My line is, I say, look, these are my fees. I don't discount my fees,
mm-hmm.
but I don't necessarily need to be paid in cash.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? To what you were saying earlier,
mm-hmm.
it could mean a membership.
Mm-hmm.
It could mean a referral.
Mm-hmm.
It could mean I want you to videotape this and edit it.
Right.
I want you to post this on social media.
Mm-hmm.
But
mm-hmm.
there are certain things, or what I learned from very, very on, I want you to invite someone from another organization
mm-hmm.
or another part of the branch,
yep.
another part of the company
mm-hmm.
that could potentially see the value of what I do and hire
mm-hmm.
me and bring me in.
Right.
Because all that is very valuable to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we can now say, okay, how do we close the gap?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I don't think it's as simple as conversation
mm-hmm.
as you don't have it, I'm out of here.
Mm-hmm. Right. And yeah, there are those that have their set. I mean, President Obama, people like that. I mean, they have their set fees, but I'm pretty sure they still negotiate, and things like that. Now their negotiation is going to be a little different than but
I agree, but I also think they also have their causes.
Right. Yeah.
And there's a lot more of that
mm-hmm.
cause stuff going on. I can't remember where I read it, but it's got to be back 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It was a singer. It was kind of a relatively unknown singer,
mm-hmm.
but he was big enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember who it is for the life
mm-hmm.
of me. And this is 30, 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, he was doing this program. It was like a charity. It was whatever it was. But
mm-hmm.
Frank Sinatra was singing on it.
Ah.
And so this guy was a bit of an ego thing. And
mm-hmm.
he was like, all right, I will do your event. Frank Sinatra was just kind of showing up and smiling and maybe
mm-hmm.
singing a song. But this guy was really, really working it.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, I'll do your event, but I know I'm doing like 10 times as much. He goes, pay me $1 more than you're paying Frank Sinatra. I want bragging rights. They hummed and hummed. They said, okay, sir, we'll do it. And they did it. And
mm-hmm.
guess what his check was?
$1.
$1.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So although these people have celebrity status
mm-hmm.
and they do have their fees and their
right.
the set fees,
mm-hmm.
as you know, the way the world works, the way business works, there's
mm-hmm.
always exceptions.
Right. Yeah, I started many years ago with an agency where I learned so much, good and bad. And one of the things that the owner taught us was he never published the pricing anywhere. And he said, you charge what the market will bear. And his thought process was, say it's a nonprofit. Okay, then you have very different fees for them. If it's for, say, physicians, lawyers, people who are used to themselves charging those big amounts, then you charge them more. Because if you said, oh, it's $20 an hour, they're not going to see any value in it. If you tell them it's 2000, then they're going, okay, maybe I'm going to pay attention to this. And and so that's where, and people are always asking me, why don't you publish your fees? And I tell them, because they are negotiable.
Yeah, I also think that because sometimes publishing fees can be really complicated.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I've been doing this 28 years,
Mm-hmm.
and people still think I'm 12 now.
Mm-hmm.
So, 28 years ago, the only group I had credibility with was students.
Right.
And what you can do and charge in a high school
Mm-hmm.
is very different than when you're talking to a C-suite.
Right.
And so and today, even the phone still rings for high
Mm-hmm.
school opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually have a fee schedule. It's fairly complicated. It's
Mm-hmm.
like it's a grid. Who's the audience,
Mm-hmm.
right? What's the program?
Right.
And the thing, and if you kind of post that, it gets complicated.
Uh-huh. Yeah, because they're going,
for sure. And I just had this happen last week. There was an organization, and I wanted to do it,
mm-hmm.
but the budget we weren't even close. And so what I did, and I kind of chatted with them, and I said,
mm-hmm.
okay, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm willing to make a clerical error in your favor and pretend
mm-hmm.
you're a high school. And so now all of a sudden they got the
mm-hmm.
high school rate.
Mm-hmm.
And then for me, from a business standpoint, it's like, okay, I did one more high school and one less business.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of a win.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas again, when you post things like that, as a speaker, I'm not a fan of it. When
mm-hmm.
you're dealing with commodity items,
mm-hmm.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know if I'm buying the sugar online, how much is the sugar? Don't make me call
mm-hmm.
and email you.
Mm-hmm.
Also, generally speaking, as a speaker, as a consultant,
mm-hmm.
they are higher ticket items.
Right.
And they're much more customizable.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like to, sometimes you can give people a range. You
mm-hmm.
can give and again, some people prefer to do it. I'm
mm-hmm.
not a fan. I definitely am on the same side of the fence
mm-hmm.
with this as you are.
Right. And that is about being a leader, which is what we're supposed to be talking about, right? I should have told you before we started. I'm one of those that goes squirrel, but this was a really fun squirrel.
Yeah. Okay,
yeah. So I mentioned in your bio the 10-80-10 principle, and I watched the short video on your website. Very funny. I loved it. But tell us because we've heard the 80-20 principle, and this is kind of the same thing, but more fine-tuned, I think, is probably the way to do it. So what is the 10-80-10 principle?
Okay, so you mentioned the 80-20 rule, which is known mm-hmm. as the Pareto principle. And Pareto principle, 10-80-10 is kind of a bit of Pareto principle on steroids mm-hmm. with a bunch of other conduits and factors. Mm-hmm. And so just quickly, as I mentioned, doing this for 28 years, mm-hmm. Anytime you do something for 28 years, you'll usually do it for one of two reasons. Either A, people have really good blackmail photos.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Or B, you legitimately, truly love it. And when mm-hmm. you legitimately, truly love something, you become a student of the game. Mm-hmm. And I'm constantly reading and writing and researching and learning. Mm-hmm. And in this self-help, leadership, personal development kind of realm, I found that every time I read something, certain themes kept on coming up time mm-hmm. and time again. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of mushed a bunch of them together with things like Pareto to come up with this mm-hmm. notion of the 10-80-10 principle. So what is it? 10-80-10 principle says you can take any group of people mm-hmm. and you can subdivide them into three groups. Mm-hmm. Top 10%, bottom 10%, majority 80%. Mm-hmm. Top 10 have to be there. The top 10 want to be there.
Right.
Bottom 10 have to be there. Mm-hmm. The majority 80 follows whichever group is more empowered.
Yeah, they're like, okay.
Yeah, go with the flow. Go with mm-hmm. the flow, guys mm-hmm. or girls. And so let me give you a couple of examples where you've seen this. Have you ever been at a live presentation mm-hmm. that you ended up giving a standing ovation to it that you did not believe deserved a standing ovation?
Yep.
You're laughing because everyone's done it.
You stood because everybody else stood.
Absolutely. So what happens is, you're in the theater, mm-hmm. right? And you end up happening to sitting next to the lead role's mother.
Ah.
And what happens is the program finishes. You're like, it was okay. It's cute, mm-hmm. whatever. The mother stands up,
yes,
hooting and hollering, throwing mm-hmm. roses. Oh, that's my baby. That's
yes.
my girl. Oh, that's your heart. And
there's no way you're not getting out of your seat.
Absolutely. So she's what I would call a top 10. Mm-hmm. She is empowered. She's excited. Right. She's mm-hmm. doing her thing. And as a majority 80, you're like, all right, social convention. Mm-hmm. You don't want to be rude.
Right.
All that kind of stuff. You stand up and you clap. You're polite.
Mm-hmm.
Great. There's an example, the top 10 getting empowered, the majority 80 following. Mm-hmm. On the flip side, ever had an example where you're in a presentation that is hideously bad. It's excruciatingly painful.
Yep.
It is boring. It is useless content. It is delivered, ugly. It's just nasty. And you look around the room, and everyone else in the room is either in a side conversation, they pulled out their phone.
Right.
What do you find yourself doing? I got to check my email.
Yeah. You check out also.
Absolutely. The bottom 10 in that situation get empowered. And as a majority, you tend to go with the flow.
Right.
Right. And so that's the kind of the backdrop of it. So the question becomes this: who does it make most sense to target? The top 10, the bottom 10, and the majority 80. And there's a rationale for all three. The thought is, if I can get the bottom 10 to do something, I can get anyone to do anything. Right. Example I often use is I say, if you go back to high school for a minute, and there's that one guy or girl that never went to the high school dance. If I can get him or her to go to the dance, I can get the school to go to the dance. So get for the lowest common denominator, lift it up. Makes sense. The problem with that strategy, though, is we don't know why the bottom 10 are bottom 10s. So, for example, if you're in a sales role, if you're trying to sell something to a bottom 10, they may be a bottom 10 because they're uninformed.
Right.
But they also may be a bottom 10 because they simply don't have the money to do it. And you may have the best product ever, but they simply cannot buy it. So what you're doing is you're wasting your resources trying to convince someone in the bottom 10 because you don't know their whole story. The majority 80, who are they? Well, again, they're go with the flow. Right? So if what would be a good example? A go with the flow. Actually, let's go back to the top 10 first.
Okay.
For the top 10. Top 10. So, well, the top 10 want to be there. And if I'm trying to sell to the top 10, there's a logic that says, well, they're already buying from me.
Right. So why would I bother?
Why would I bother? And I'll tell you why. Because they're going to become raging advocates for you. I've had the opportunity to speak with a lot of real estate people over the years. And so here's the example I will use on the real estate side of things. Say you're doing a promotion and you have the $100 gift basket. And this is what you're doing. You're going to give it away as to try to get business. You look around and you go, oh, that guy right there, he buys a house every day. And as a realtor, you lick your lips and you go, that is the ideal customer. From your perspective, that person is a bottom 10 because they're not your client.
Right.
They have a realtor, likely, and they're the realtor relationship.
Right. So why would they pay attention to you at all?
Right. So I go, I'm going to give them the gift basket. So I give them the gift basket. What happens? One of a few things. Either A, they go, fruit, and they eat it.
Thank
They're
you.
going to go, weird, creepy. Maybe it's poison. They're going to compost it, or they're going to re-gift it.
Right.
But in none of the scenarios do they go, I'm going to ditch my realtor who I've been loyal to and have a relationship with to go and attract to the stranger.
Right.
It is completely wasted. On the flip side, if I give it to my top 10, remember, they're already your raving advocate. So what are they going to do? They're going to go, what? You don't need to give this to me.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, this is great. Now that person is going to go to the card game, to the salon, to the dinner party, to the neighborhood gathering barbecue, and they're going to go, you're not going to believe what my agent did for me. And they're going to talk about it. And this is what's gone on. As the top 10 gets empowered, the majority 80 follows.
Right.
Once you hit that critical mass, which is your top 10 plus your majority 80, this is where I think the magic happens. The bottom 10 does one of two things. Either they say, wait for me. I need a real estate agent.
FOMO.
Exactly. Or they go, what kind of a cult is this? I'm out of here. And they disengage. Either thing.
That's fine.
Exactly. Either you're going to increase your base or you're going to refine it and get rid of the people who aren't going to buy from you anyways.
Right. So
the idea is, from the 10-80-10 principle, is you're always trying to identify who your top 10 is and empower them, because they're going to get you your biggest bang for your buck, your best use of resources, whether it's a sales, whether it's an organizational culture issue, whether it's a change management situation.
Right. And it's funny because when I was reading your materials, and you have a video, a little short video, and it says something along the lines of, who should you be going after? My first thought was the 80%. Because they're close to, and you've already got your raving fans, so you don't have to worry about them. You don't want to worry about the bottom 10. And so to me, it was like, oh my gosh. But But yeah, it's like, oh my, no, it has to be those top 10. And, I mentioned it earlier. There's that little thing called word of mouth. When those top 10 people, say, Sanjay is the greatest thing in the world, I'm like, okay, and so then, that 80% is going to sway that way.
You hit the nail on the head. So one of the ways I explain it is with a blood drive clinic. I say, if you're in charge of the blood drive clinic, you have a 10-80-10 split to giving blood. Bottom 10 never give blood. Top 10 do it every day. They're woozy. And the majority 80 follow whichever group.
Right.
If I'm going after the bottom 10, are they going to give blood? Doesn't matter what I do. I don't know why they're not giving blood. It could be religious reasons.
You might get a couple, but is it worth your effort?
I don't even think you would, because if they're truly bottom 10, they don't do it.
Yeah. They're not even going to pay attention to you.
Right. The majority 80, they're, that's the spectrum at the top there. Yes, they might do it. And some of them need much more convincing, right? The top 10, they already do it. If you say, hey, you thought about giving blood, they're halfway up the door going, where do I go? What do I do? But here's the thing. When you've empowered them, and by empowering them, you give them time, energy, attention, resources. When you empower them, they go, they give blood, but here's the best part. They come back and they become a champion of the very behavior you're trying to instill in other people. So they come back with a muffin in one hand, a juice in the other. They sit down at their desk.
They posted the picture on social media. All those.
And all of a sudden, people around them start going, "What did you? Hey, you got a free juice? I want a juice. How'd you get
that shirt?"
So the top 10 gets empowered. The majority 80 actually follows them. So you actually are going after the majority 80, as you were saying, because that's the critical mass. But the most effective way to do it is not like, if I'm in an organization of 100 people and there's 80 people in the majority 80, how do I get 80 people to give blood? Do I run through the halls going, give blood, give blood, give blood, give blood, give blood, give blood to 80 people? Or do I have a one-on-one conversation with 10 and go, hey, have you thought about giving blood? They go give blood. They now plaster it on social media. They now put a little sign on their desk that said, I gave blood, and a big smile. They have the muffin out there, and their friends then say, well, what's that all about? You've created an army of 10 people who now can go after those 80, and it's much more effective and efficient.
Right.
And the other really, really great thing about this strategy is you get the benefit of, where do you want to spend most of your time? The top 10, the bottom 10, and the majority 80. Right. If I ask people, if you spent your majority of your work hours with your top 10 clients, your top 10 vendors, your top 10 suppliers, your top 10 coworkers, your top 10 bosses, your top 10 subordinates, do you agree your job satisfaction goes up? And they go, of course. Does your stress level go down? Absolutely. So if I can spend my time with these people to empower them to create an army, to attract the majority 80, hit that critical mass much more quickly, we get less stress, and we're doing things much more efficiently.
Right. And you should be saving. Right. I love it when I get to use my sound effects, because when you're trying to reach 80, you're going to have to spend a lot of money and a lot of time. When you're just reaching out to your top 10, there still is time. There may still be money that you're having to spend with them, but it is, or should be, less.
Yeah. So this is strictly an observation, no science behind this whatsoever. Okay. So as I mentioned, I started off speaking in the youth market. I've spoken at over 1,200 schools in my career. And I found there was a very distinct relationship between display trophy cases and the behaviors of students.
Right.
And again, this is unofficial, but when I would walk into a school and the display cases were up front and center and updated, not like 1954.
Right, yeah, you won.
Exactly. Right. I found that the students behaved better. There was less interruption. They laughed harder. There was better silence. They behaved better. When I walked in and the display case was knocked over and broken, or there was none, or any of that stuff, more interruptions, more behavioral issues. And I'm not sure what it is. My theory is, so subconsciously people walk in and they constantly see it and they kind of go, I'd love to be on there one day, or I know him, or that's my buddy. And there's an affiliation, not an affiliation, an attraction to it. And people want to be part of the top 10.
Right.
And it's giving attention. Remember I said that, attention, energy, thoughts, resources. These are the things. And by giving it that, we subconsciously or consciously empower it, it attracts the majority 80.
Right.
I'm always a big fan of rewarding rather than reprimanding. It doesn't mean you shouldn't reprimand, but I'm saying that actually, I'll give you a great example. During COVID, I've had a lot of people ask me, especially in the virtual setting, how does this whole 10-80-10 concept apply to COVID? And one of the things that when I'm explaining the concept, I really try to emphasize is top 10 and bottom 10 does not mean right or wrong.
Right.
Top 10 simply means you exhibit the behaviors I'm looking for. Bottom 10 means you don't.
Right.
And it is not an assessment of what's right or wrong. So when people ask me about COVID and vaccinations and how this rolls out, I say, first of all, what's your top 10? Because if you're a pro-vaxxer, your top 10 is your vaccinated people.
Right.
If you're an anti-vaxxer, your top 10 is your not vaccinated.
Right.
Right. And so usually when the question was coming, it was always from, why aren't those anti-vaxxers being vaccinated? So I'm not trying to be political. I don't care where your stance is. I'm just trying to apply the principle as to how it plays out. So I go, okay, so we're going to make the assumption that the top 10 means you're vaccinated, bottom 10 means you're not. So how do you get more people vaccinated? Simple. You do not give a platform to the people who are at the bottom 10.
Right.
Who said, my neighbor got vaccinated and my dog is having issues now. Like, the people, whether it's crazy or not, accurate or not, you don't want to give credence and
you do not argue with them.
You don't give them the platform. My language is you neutralize them. You spend the minimal amount of time, energy, attention, and thought so they no longer draw resources. Then you go over to the top 10 and you empower them. How? Interviews, rewards, perks, benefits, case studies, vaccinator of the month. And by doing that, other people go, oh, well, I want that.
Right.
How are the top 10, the majority 80 falls, the bottom 10 one does one of two things. They go, everyone else is getting vaccinated. Sign me up.
Yeah.
Or
they didn't die. I guess I should do it.
Right. Or this is a cult. Let's go. We'll get away from these people. And they leave. And again, either way, you're getting what you want.
Right. And that's why sometimes things like celebrity endorsements and all of those work also. Now, I'm not a big fan of celebrity endorsements simply because in many cases I look at it and I go, I'm sorry, Jennifer Aniston does not use the face cream from Walgreens. Now she might, but I mean, I'm just thinking that she doesn't. But, but we did see that during COVID where you saw people like Pink. I remember that was one of the commercials that she talked about that she had health issues, so that's why she got vaccinated. And you saw sports people, you saw them on the news, you saw all of these various things, and whether they were a paid spokesperson or not, I think there were people who went, oh, okay, well, if so and so did it, then I probably should too.
Oh, absolutely. Why do you think Nike spends so much money?
Right. Everybody loved Michael Jordan.
And how many kids, base their sports career on whose shoes, who's promoting the shoes. I don't have a problem with celebrity endorsements as long as they're legit.
Right.
Right. And so but we don't know which is which. How many of them are doing it for the money? And I don't have a problem with being paid. Don't get me wrong.
Right. Oh yeah. Back to that original conversation.
Absolutely. You can get paid. I don't have an issue with it. But are you promoting Ford but driving a Toyota? Right. That's what I'm saying. They need to be legit. Don't tell me to get a vaccination if you haven't gotten one, or don't tell me not to smoke if you're smoking, etc. Right. That to me is more of an ethical issue, and that's just kind of how I'm wired. But I go again, not to be political. Let's say a political word. Donald Trump. So when Donald Trump won his election, if you recall, he won with not the majority of the votes.
Right. He had that top 10.
That's exactly. Again, I'm not being political. I don't care where your political stripes are. But what did he do? He said, I'm not going to even win in these ridings. I'm not going to bother.
I'm not even going to try.
Not even going to try. All the resources I would have put there, I'll go over here where it's close and push myself up. So even though he won with fewer votes, he got more seats because it was ineffective. He used the 10-80-10 strategy.
Right. And we see that with politicians all the time.
For sure. The more effective ones understand that. Here's a kind of, I think, a bit of crazy math. Okay. So let's pretend there's a particular riding. And more or less, voter turnout, if you look municipal, federal,
Mhm.
state, across the board, more or less is 50% ish.
Mhm.
Okay. 50% ish. Now, if we have a particular riding,
Mhm.
and we're going to pretend there's your two, a Democrat and a
Mhm.
Republican, and let's pretend there's two independents running.
Mhm.
You got 4 people running. And let's pretend there's a little lower than normal voter turnout, 40% show up.
Mhm.
Okay, so 40%, 4 people running. And if there happens to be a 4-person race that it's really close between all 4 of them,
Mhm.
eventually one of them is going to win
Mhm.
by a few votes.
Mhm.
That just means that this blows my mind, because that scenario is not a wacky scenario. That could
Right.
very well
Happens
happen.
all the time.
Right.
Mhm.
That just meant that one person won with roughly a little more than 10% of the popular vote.
Right. Mhm. Yeah,
So,
when you actually look at those numbers.
so hold on a second. In the United States of America,
Mhm.
in the democratic envy of the whole freaking world,
Mhm.
you can win an honest, fair election with 10% of the vote.
Mhm.
See, that to me is mind blowing.
Mhm.
And if you can do that what you're trying to do is
Mhm.
when you find someone who is supporting you, who is your
Mhm.
top 10, as an employee, as a
Mhm.
peer, as a family member, as
Mhm.
a sports team
Mhm.
buddy, what you want to do is empower them, because
Mhm.
again, they're going to attract more people like them.
Mhm.
You want to find that mother
Right.
at the theater and
Mhm.
give her roses to throw at
Mhm.
her kid,
Yeah.
because you're
Right.
going to get more standing ovations.
Mhm. Right.
So
So now, is there a risk though in ignoring those bottom 10? I mean, are you going to give them such motivation that they're going to really start standing out?
depends. And so it's not about ignoring. The
Mhm.
language I use is neutralizing.
Right.
And again, I'm going to redefine that. I say
Mhm.
neutralizing, you put the minimal amount of time, energy, attention, and
Mhm.
thought so it no longer draws resources.
Mhm.
Sometimes that means ignoring.
Right.
Other times it doesn't.
Sometimes it might mean saying, "Thank you for your opinion."
Absolutely. Sometimes it might be yell at them. Sometimes
Mhm.
it might be fire them.
Mhm.
Sometimes it might be pair them up with someone
Mhm.
else. Sometimes it might be give them an activity. So,
Mhm.
as an example, as a professional speaker, you may find this hard to believe, that sometimes I'm in front of audiences, check this out, and not everyone in the audience wants to be there.
No.
I know, first only person in the history of the world that's ever happened to.
Right. Right. Mhm.
And so, depending on what the person is doing,
Mhm.
you approach that in different ways.
Mhm.
So if the person's on their phone, constantly
Right.
looking at their phone, not paying
Mhm.
attention to me, but they're quiet, how do I deal with that?
Mhm.
I ignore it. That's a
Right.
really good way to
Because
neutralize.
they're really not having any effect.
But here's the other thing too. When we see the bottom 10 and we go, I gotta fix them, I gotta
Mhm.
fix her, I gotta fix him.
Mhm.
You don't know their story. For
Right.
all I know, that guy has a pregnant daughter who's
Mhm.
about to go into labor,
Yeah,
and
he's got to check his email and texts. Mhm.
right. So me engaging him and
Mhm.
telling him more jokes and sending him
Mhm.
love and trying to ask him questions
Mhm.
does not help the situation.
Mhm.
All it does is it takes my energy away from
Mhm.
helping other people.
Right.
So in this particular case, a great strategy would be to ignore.
Mhm.
However, if Deb is in the back seat,
Mhm.
back corner, back row with her
Mhm.
laptop open, playing on full blast YouTube videos,
Oh. Mhm.
elbowing her neighbors,
Mhm.
going, "Hey, that Sunjay guy, and say he's not funny. This is way funny. Check this
Mhm.
out." Ignoring you is not neutralizing it.
Right. Because I'm going to get louder.
Absolutely. So what do I do? Well,
Mhm.
again, experience comes into play. It
Mhm.
might mean I give everyone an activity, and then I come over you and have a one-on-one
Mhm.
discussion.
Yeah.
It
What's
might
so
mean
interesting? Mhm.
absolutely. It
Mhm.
might mean I'm in a grumpy mood and I yell at you. I
Mhm.
kick you out of the room.
Mhm.
I ask one of your friends to tell you to be quiet. I
Mhm.
ask the host to do something. There
Mhm.
are different strategies
Right.
based on the experience.
Mhm.
So ignoring isn't always the option.
Mhm.
It's a matter of playing to the level of
Mhm.
what is the minimal thing I can do,
Mhm.
because I don't want to waste resources. I don't want to waste mental calories. I
Mhm.
don't want to waste time. I don't want to waste
Mhm.
money. I want you to shut up.
Right.
And I will go through my Rolodex
Mhm.
of ideas to do that.
Mhm.
So, one of the questions that often comes up when I'm explaining this is people will say, well, is that favoritism? How come you're dealing with the top 10 and now you're
Mhm.
ignoring?
Right. You like me better than them.
And the answer is yes, I do.
Mhm.
Because if my goal is to engage, if my goal is to teach, if my goal is to learn, they're supporting me. They've earned that right. That's like saying, well, why does the CEO get more money than I get?
Right.
I'm
He's the
stock boy.
CEO.
We work for the same company. Yeah, but you're creating different value. And as a top 10, if you show up and you're mentoring and you're following the guideline and you're in this thing and you're promoting what my desired result is, you deserve more attention.
Right.
And you've earned it. Not playing favoritism. Why is one car more expensive than you? Because it's more valuable.
Right.
That's why.
Well, and like you said, the 80, they're gonna go one way or the other. And so, what you want is to, keep that bottom 10, or, like we said, there might be a couple that kind of trickle up every once in a while, but you want to make the 10 bigger. You want to have those converts.
100%. And so what actually happens is, as you empower the top 10, remember the majority 80 falls, the bottom 10 break apart, some leave, some join. And what you've actually done is lifted up the group a little bit.
Right.
And you know what you do? You re-10 and E10 them. And you lift them up again. And you re-10 and E10 and lift them up again and again and again. And that's the idea. It's an iterative process that you're doing over and over again. And over time, it should escalate. Now, some people find this motivating, some find it demotivating, but there's always a bottom 10. Every group has a bottom 10. If you think about it, even the all-star team has its weakest players. Now, they're really good weak players.
Right.
And that's what you want. You want to keep raising the floor, raising the floor, making more money, creating a better culture, getting people more connected, creating more value. This is what we do, making better products. And that's all we're doing. And the way we're going to do that is by focusing on who's my top 10. And here's the other thing too, is top 10 doesn't describe a person. It describes a dimension of a person.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is, at any given time in your life, you're in all three areas. You may be top 10 when it comes to work, maybe bottom 10 when it comes to eating.
Right.
Maybe majority 80 when it comes to relationships. So it's not fair to say that person's bottom 10 and get rid of them. No, because the very behaviors that make you bottom 10 in one particular situation can make you top 10 in another. So a great example I like to use is if we're sitting around and we're doing a brainstorming exercise, and there's a devil's advocate in the room. We all want to choke him or her.
Right.
They're annoying. They're frustrated. Like, we're just shut up. We're trying to get ideas, not shoot them down. But if you take the same group and the same devil's advocate, but now instead of doing a brainstorming exercise, we're doing a safety exercise. And the devil's
you want that person going, yeah, but.
but exactly. Well, what if aliens come down and abduct us? And we're like, oh, good point. Yeah. Never thought about that. So that very skill of questioning everything and kind of being grouchy, it becomes an asset. You go from being a top 10 to a bottom 10 right away. So another reason why we say bottom 10 isn't bad and top 10 is good. Top 10 just means you exhibit the behaviors I'm looking for, and bottom 10 means you don't. Not an assessment on who they are.
Right. Well, and again, when you acknowledge those bottom 10, and in a positive way, the ones that should go, we want them to go. But, say somebody does say, well, what if aliens do this? Okay, thank you for asking that question. Here's our battle plan for that. Now, it might be all total tongue in cheek and all sorts of things, but you might just have moved them to that 80% because you heard them, you acknowledged them, and they were like, oh, okay, well, maybe Sanjay's not quite as wonkadoodle as I thought he was.
For sure. And it's the other thing too, is bottom 10 people are not bottom 10 where they wake up in the morning, twist their mustache going, what evil doing what bottom 10 behaviors will I exhibit today? You, more often than not, they're bottom 10 because they're misfits. And you take that person and you put them on a different project in the same organization, and all of a sudden they go from being a dud to being a superstar. And so I actually was doing some work with a golf course, country club, and chatted with the executive director, and he was saying one of the things he does is every time he brings on someone as a hire, 6 weeks later, he has this check-in with them. And it's a very informal thing, but he asks some questions like, what do you love most about your job? What do you hate most about your job? He's just kind of seeing the fit. And he said recently, talking to this kid, he just brought him on as a server. And he said to the kid, what do you love most about the job? And he was like, oh man, I love getting it right. When they say no mayo or whatever, and just getting into the system and having it just be perfect. And he's like, cool. And then he said to him, what do you hate most about the job? And the kid goes, probably dealing with the customers. Right. And so he brought him on as a customer interface server, and kind of laughed about it. And he realized that this kid would have been much better served as a controller.
Right.
And, lining things up. And stuff. And so him and I were kind of chatting back and forth, and he goes, so he switched him. He got him into a different role. The kid was eager. He was keen.
Right.
And so I said to him, was that a promotion or a demotion? And we kind of hummed and hawed, and we came up with a new term we made up. We called it a fit motion.
Right.
And moving into the position that best suits your personality. Because if he stayed as a server, I promise you, he would burn out and he would eventually become a bottom 10.
Right.
And not because he's a bad guy, but because he's
just not in the good fit.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I think that's where, people are complaining so much, or voicing opinions, I should say, about COVID and people still working from home, because it is difficult to kind of, just on Zoom or, whatever platform you're using, to kind of gauge some of these things. Are they, you're just seeing, the little top part of them and whatever's behind them. And so they might look like they're engaging, they might be flipping you off where you can't see their hands, or, all of these various things. And so that's why people are like, no, we got to get people back into the office. We have to engage with them. Yeah. I mean, it is. It's one of those where, as my mother would say, half a dozen of one, six of another, right? Some people did incredibly well working remotely, or going to school remotely, or, all of those various things. And then others definitely need that in-person interaction. And that's where back to finding the right fit. For
sure. I also think, though, saying it very bluntly, if you sucked at employee engagement in person, you sucked online.
Right.
And
in fact, it probably got worse.
For sure. And if you were good at it in person, you've made a way to make it good online. And I don't think it's the platform. You can take this whole Zoom conversation, this whole work from home conversation, and back it up 70 years when the telephone came on. Oh, no, we need to be in the room. They can't have this.
I can only make the sale if I'm face to face with them.
Absolutely. So yes and no. I mean, if you want to make it work, you're going to find out a way to make it work.
Right.
And if you want not to make it work, you'll find all the excuses in the world. Don't get me wrong. There's certain benefits to being face to face you cannot get online. But if people have a willingness to make it work, they will make it work. If you look at it, it's a top 10, bottom 10 thing. If the people are top 10 and they're like, we're going to make this work, those are the people you want to engage. Those are the people you want to use the case study. Look at what these guys are doing. This is amazing. This is cool. And the people that are grumpy and they're the bottom 10ers going, it's not going to work.
They've turned their cameras off.
Absolutely. There's a guy that only got to ever win 2 Nobel Prizes individually. And he has this great line. He said, you tell them only once. Because people who want to hear it will get it the first time. And people that don't want to hear it, no matter how many times you tell them, they're never going to get it.
Right. Yeah.
So
it's funny. I work with people who do dog training, and basically the same concept, saying no, 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 no. The dog knew with the second no, you didn't really mean it. And so they're just, and even if you're escalating your voice, all of those things, the dog was like, yeah, but you didn't mean it back then. And I think you mentioned you've got 3 boys. Probably
speaking of dog training.
Right? Yes. You tell them don't do that. And, and if you have to tell them 3, 4, 5, 6 times, it's not going to work because they didn't pay attention the first time. Now at some point, there might actually be a reaction simply because, you might say I'm grounding you, or, you're not eating for 5 days. I mean, all of those things, but they knew the first time you said it, whether you meant it or not.
Yes, absolutely. And that's true. We train people, the interactions we have with them. Right? And we know that too, when our friend who says, oh, I'll pick you up. We know they're not coming to pick us up.
Right. Or they're going to be 15 minutes late. Or
on the flip side, the people that said, I will be there on time, they're going to be there on time. We have to set that precedence and the expectation, whether it's in a professional setting, a social setting, whatever. And again, how do we do that? Well, the behavior we want.
Mm-hmm.
Top 10, the more we can empower that,
Mm-hmm.
more we're going to get our entire organization shifting and getting everyone moving towards
Mm-hmm.
that common
Right.
result.
Right. Yeah, and we can't emphasize it enough. As it rises, everything rises. I mean, those bottom 10, you will have lost the ones that you really should have lost, but it's elevating everybody.
Yeah, 100%. And again, sometimes people think that they go, oh, I got to get the bottom 10. That's the low hanging fruit. No, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, you don't know why they're bottom 10.
Right.
They can be bottom 10 because they hate you.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to buy from you.
Right.
No matter what you say or do, you're not going to do.
Mm-hmm.
You're just wasting resources.
Mm-hmm.
Again, on the top 10, these are your raving fans.
Mm-hmm.
If we can empower these people to create an army, to act as a magnet, to attract the majority 80, mm-hmm. you're gonna spend less time, you're gonna spend less money, you're gonna have a higher job satisfaction,
mm-hmm.
you're gonna have less stress, your shoulders are gonna drop, you're gonna smile more,
mm-hmm.
your bank account's gonna increase.
Right. Well, oh my gosh, this has been so much fun. And we have to do this again because I think this is so informative. But, for people who are saying, Sanjay, we got to work with you. We got to have you come speak to us. Tell us how they find you and all of the offerings that you have.
For sure. First of all, if that's what they're thinking, then yes, you're thinking the right thing. So and
I'll be the top 10 for you. Yes,
exactly.
yes. We love Sanjay.
But that's the whole thing though, right? There are people on this call right now that think I'm an idiot. Mm-hmm. And that's my bottom 10. That doesn't make them bad people. Mm-hmm. They just like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Mm-hmm. That's absolutely wrong. Right.
And they're going to go on to the next person.
Exactly. And I'm not going to try to sell you my book because it's a useless exercise. But if people kind of go, I kind of like the way this guy thinks or his lack of sense of humor or whatever it is, then I go, great, come to my website. My website is my name. It's www.sunjaynath.com. That's SUNJAYNATH.com. And I'm sure it's going to be somewhere in the promo material. So it's just my website. Primarily what I do is a lot of professional speaking, mostly kind of keynotes, half day, whole day things. But I do occasionally reach out and do some consulting, that kind of stuff. Really what I would say is let's have a conversation to see how I can best serve.
I love it. And it's about, finding what works best. I mean, and that really is the thing, and being flexible. I mean, we talked about, several, but it really is about being flexible. And doesn't matter what you're doing, unless it's a life or death, situation. And let's face it, most of the time it's not, right. It is, it's about, how can we, I haven't had enough coffee yet today. How can we make it work for as many people as possible? If it's not that bottom 10, fine. Wish them well and send them on their way.
And that is absolutely the strategy. You wish them well and send them on their way. They're not bad people. They're just bad fits.
Right. And you don't want them there anyway.
Yeah. And they don't want to be there.
Right.
So it's a win-win to let people go. And then again, the top 10 do want to be there. How do we empower them? It's your show. If you go and try to push it to people who don't want to listen to it, they're not going to listen to it.
Right.
You're just wasting your time. But if they're people who do love you, who are raving fans, and they go, oh, this Deb, oh, she's wonderful. Then they're going to tell their neighbors, oh, this is what she said here was brilliant. Oh, this is wonderful. Or, their cousin is starting a new business. You need to listen to the Power Hour. This one's going to change the way you do business. Those are the people we want to be focused on.
Right. Well, oh my gosh. This really has been so much fun. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
Well, I hate to sound like a broken record, but quit wasting time on the bottom 10. They will suck the life out of you before they ever convert. When you can and you have the energy and the resources, be focusing on the top 10, and that'll lead you and stair-step you towards your desired results.
I love it. So much fun. Well, Sanjay, this really has been a great time, and I can't wait to do it again. I'm Deb Creer. I've been talking with Sunjay Nath, and until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.